I just hope they're this brutal as they have been with the staff that have been there for years and that they're culling, right? I hope they're this brutal with the players that are there.
Yeah.
If there's any players that are there, and ones that have either been there too long or the ones who just ain't good enough,
Gotta go, bro.
be as brutal as they've been. Get them the fuck out, quick, ASAP.
I think it's fair to say that Rio Ferdinand didn't exactly hold back in his assessment of what needs to happen with Manchester United's players in the same way as INEOS are being ruthless towards the staff, the club, and every other aspect of the business. And I've got to say, I think he's 100% correct. I want to run through what Rio had to say and also then sort of take that forward into January and what I think could happen that would show that ruthlessness. Because obviously the conversation this week has caught everybody by surprise. The Dan Ashworth situation. No one saw it coming, all right? Now that all the story has come out, it seemed like it was inevitable, really, given the relationship between Ashworth and Ratcliffe and Barada and Wilcox. But in terms of that ruthlessness, the mistake should never have been made in the first place, but they got rid after 5 months and they accepted their mistake. And effectively what Rio is saying here is so many of these United players are simply just not good enough to play for Manchester United. This is what Rio actually said here. He said, Dan Ashworth, his departure from Manchester United, confusion's the first thing that comes to mind. I just hope they are this brutal as they have been with the staff that have been there for years and that they're culling. I hope that they are this brutal with the players that are there. And if there are any crap players that are there and ones that have been there for too long, all the ones that just aren't good enough, be as brutal as they have been. Get them the fuck out quick. And I hope they are like that. And my immediate reaction to that is, first of all, we all know Rio's right. But second of all, to hear Rio speak like that, so sort of openly, it's not against individuals, but typically Rio and Neville and former players of the club will kind of not toe the party line, but they won't particularly want to ruffle feathers because they have relationships. They are friends with a lot of these players, and therefore to be saying that in public it may well be what is best for the football club, but it won't be what is best for that established relationship. And I think that's a refreshing change for me to hear Rio speak so openly and honestly there. Because look, this squad, right? You know, we talk about how, it's the players getting the managers sacked, etc., etc., etc. There's been a huge turnaround and a huge turnover of the squad. And actually, largely, a lot of what the squad we've got right now didn't even play under Solskjaer, didn't play under Mourinho, and have been signed by Erik ten Hag. Now, of course, there are some players that have been here for that length of time, but the overwhelming majority of these players, you look at that one there, Ugarte signed in the summer, Martinez signed a couple of summers ago, Mazraoui signed this summer, Delot's been there a fair while, and so has Maguire, Ahmad, he's only just broken through now, Xerxes brand new, Rashford has been there the longest, Eriksen, coming a free transfer, and Bruno's been there for some time. And you know what? I'm probably going to do a separate video on this. But honestly, I've gone through this. I did it on the live show this morning. I've gone through the squad, and I'm like, how many of these players would I genuinely put money on being in this United squad in like 3 years' time? And honestly, there are only a handful of these players. And that is what Rio is getting at when he is saying this. There are simply players in that squad that just are not good enough to be Manchester United. And if you're going to be as ruthless and as brutal with every aspect of the football club, from cutting Christmas parties to 25% of the workforce, that same logic and ruthlessness has to be applied by Jim Ratcliffe to transfers. And I completely agree with Rio there. And I think if you take a look towards the January transfer window, there are two opportunities, in my opinion, where I think this can be shown. And number one is with Christian Eriksen. Now, Eriksen started Ruben Amorim's first game against Ipswich and has yet to play another minute since. I think Amorim made a very quick decision that Eriksen, who has been a fantastic free transfer, has no purpose for him in this team because he can't cope with the intensity. It's just the age that Eriksen is, and the point in his career where he is at doesn't suit what United need. Now, Eriksen could just be kept on for the rest of the season, then let him leave as a free transfer, handshake. Or you could let him go even as a free transfer in January, get the wages off the books, and give those minutes to someone like Toby Collier or someone like Dan Gore or an academy midfielder who maybe can just take that spot in the matchday squad. Do I think our squad will be worse off because of it? No. And it could give more opportunities and more minutes to an academy player that would otherwise be going to a player who's going to be leaving in the summer anyway and isn't fit for purpose. And Anthony, I think, is going to be held up as this example of players who I don't think are good enough for Manchester United. Anthony, when he came in, I gave him the first season, just like I'll give every player a first season. Did not develop on that in the second season. Terrible, and he's been just as bad since. Man United are going to have to accept a massive loss on Anthony. I personally think the most likely way that United will be able to move Anthony on would be to loan him out in January with an option or an obligation to buy at the end of it. I think that's probably the best case scenario. And this is for an £80 million signing. That's going to have to be in the same way that United have really accepted very quickly that they got it wrong with Dan Ashworth, and that's why they've made that decision. Not Eriksson, not Ashworth, but Anthony. They've got to accept. Previously, United would have held on to him just because we spent so much money on him. All right, it goes, maybe it'll work out. It won't work out. Cut it now. And that's what Rio's getting at, right? There has to be a shift in how long Manchester United players are given at Manchester United. Every player deserves that first season to settle in my opinion. But if that progress doesn't come in the second year, then question marks are there. And if by that third season, they are not building on what they did in the first season, then it's just game, set, match. I don't think there should be any United player who's part of this club for 3 years or more from now on, when we sign them, if they haven't proven that they deserve to be here. And if you look at how United operated in the summer, we got rid of a lot of players. And we were actually quite a few of them were undervalued because United operated on a just kind of get them out of the club and then see if we can make more money in the future on future sales. Pellistri, for example. Hannibal, another example. And Willy Cambuela, another example of players we probably could have got more for. But United made a decision to move them on and hopefully benefit from a high percentage on a future sale. And that's where Rio is spot on in his comments here. And I think that 3-year cycle, I've just thought about that now, but that makes perfect sense to me. Year 1, you've got time to settle in at Manchester United. Year 2, where's the development? All right? Now you're settled in. Now there's no excuses. Develop and show yourself. And if in that third season, like Anthony's doing this season, there's nothing, then it's game set, is game set match. Man United are moving on. No more keeping players for 5, 6, 7 years who just kind of amble through being a United player. And if we're going to move on from this idea that, players get managers sacked and all that, then Rio is right that Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS are going to have to be as ruthless with the player sales as they are with the club staff. You can let me know what you think about this in the comments, but as I said, I think it's quite refreshing to hear a former player that has influence like Rio speak so openly about that. And it might ruffle some feathers with friendships that he has. It doesn't mean he's wrong.